Paula Drogi, and this is my search for a material soul. My friend Kate has a complicated relationship with Christianity. She grew up in a small town in North Carolina where Christianity is the air you breathe. God is everywhere, watching. Your job is to follow God's plan. But if you mess up, then as long as you apologize to God, everything's all right. If you don't really believe that God exists, you should just will yourself to believe, and that will make it real. This sort of belief brings a feeling of security in the face of life's uncertainties. My previous video discussed the big God view of religion. God is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, or in the language of philosophy, omnipotent, omniscient, and omniviscous. It's curious that there's no standard attribute of God that's specific to sight. I guess if God knows all, sight is irrelevant. In addition to a big God, religious norms encourage cooperation and discourage competition. Love your neighbor, turn the other cheek, do unto others, your reward is in heaven, sell all you have and follow. These norms and public performance of rituals serve both to reinforce adherence to the religion and to verify that everyone is behaving themselves. This credibility function of religion helps explain why people are willing to sacrifice so much for religion. Fasting, celibacy, even self-flagellation and immolation are practiced out of religious devotion. Extreme displays like these signal a high degree of commitment. They also generate a high degree of commitment. In behavioral economic terms, this is the sunk cost fallacy. When you have invested resources in something, there's a tendency to continue that investment, even if it doesn't pay off. Leaders of churches in decline often try to find a way to make church less onerous in order to get more people to come. Free coffee, no sermon, a rock band. But it may be that asking members to do more would actually make membership more valuable to them. Or not. People might just find a different group. When secular groups perform the function of providing group norms of cooperation, the value of religion diminishes. Conservatives often blame profligate sexuality and communism for decreasing numbers of Christians, but democracy, laws, and police might actually be doing the work religion once did. Or not. This video was inspired by two conversations with Kate. One was last summer when we talked about the reason she no longer believes in God. The God of her youth just didn't make sense to her anymore. She never successfully willed herself to believe in the absence of any experience of God's reality, and she no longer thought there was any such thing as God's plan. And if there was, it was a pretty stupid plan if it involved so much suffering and craziness. The other conversation was about New Bracket Church on Peaks Island, Maine. It's a center of community, providing a space for events, Tai Chi classes, AA meetings, and social justice groups. Services are an eclectic mix of the middle-of-the-road Protestantism, little Quakerism, some Judaism and animism. A good bit of time is devoted to announcements of community activities and the concerns of participants. There are potlucks. Kate still doesn't believe in God, but likes being part of this community. She feels a bit duplicitous in attending church without faith or the prospect of acquiring it. The question is, could there be a non-religious version of church? In the absence of a big God and the rituals of religion, what could serve as the glue of cooperation for a new kind of pro-social group? This question has an urgency for me as I watch Trump dismantle all the social norms I've taken as essential to American democracy. If we can't count on a president dedicated to serve the people, heads of government institutions who are competent and trustworthy, and a Congress prepared to pass laws that protect the rights of all citizens and distribute the nation's resources equitably, then we're going to need some other source of social support. The cult of Trump seems to provide this social support for many of his followers. The outfits and homemade signs provide a kind of credibility display similar to religious ritual. Trump himself is almost irrelevant to the fervor generated at his rallies. His speeches are long, rambling, content-free expositions, even a half-hour music listening session. Yet supporters remain enthusiastic. Trump's demand of unquestioning loyalty means any internal criticism of action or policy is suspect, if not immediately rejected. Trump is not a big God, or at least he shouldn't be. The idea that God has anointed Trump to lead the nation violates everything I know about the message Christ brought to the world. Christ was not interested in worldly power. He preached love as a substitute for vengeance and advocated charity over accumulation. Christ welcomed the stranger. He did not throw the stranger out and slam the door after him. For these reasons, I do believe that Christ and the church have a role to play in resisting the destruction of value that Trump perpetrates. But there's a lot of reasons for groups that are not big God religions to play a role as well. To the point of this video, there are people like Kate who are not interested in religion. What would a non-religious version of church look like? Most social groups are organized around a specific function: politics, sport, hobby, issue. These are important ways to bring people together, and we should all participate in more of them. But these groups can't do the work of religion. They're formed based on values that motivate joining the group. People who like hiking join the hiking group. People worried about climate change join the activist group. Religious groups, on the other hand, are the source of values rather than the consequence of them. I'm convinced that humans have a need to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Because we realize that our lives will end, we seek some means to give our limited time purpose and value. In his book with the best title ever, Biblical Religion and the Search for Ultimate Reality, theologian Paul Tillich attributes this longing to the existentialist question: why is there something and not nothing? When we come to recognize the inevitability of our own death, we're confronted by the question of why we were even born. What's the point of life if it ends in death? While there's evidence that some animals memorialize the death of family and group members, there's no indication that any animal other than humans draw the conclusion that they themselves will die. Existential angst appears to be uniquely human. Lucky us. Existentialist philosophers such as Sartre and Camus famously responded to the problem of meaning by arguing that humans must create our own meaning out of nothing. There is no absolute value, no fundamental truth to ground our understanding of existence. We have to live and find meaning on our own, without any spiritual or rational support. Tillich also looks into the abyss of nothingness, but instead of darkness, he sees infinity. As an existentialist, Tillich agrees there are no absolute values or foundational truths. We need to create our own meaning. He then asks what sort of meaning is sufficient to truly sustain us in the face of impending death. The answer is God, or in Tillich's terminology, the power of being. Faith, for Tillich, is a state of ultimate concern. Something of ultimate concern demands the total subordination of all else and promises total fulfillment. Whatever we put at the center of life is of ultimate concern for us. For some people, work is of ultimate concern, or children, a political cause, such as the worship of Trump, or fame. We tell ourselves that this project or that accomplishment will bring the reward that we've been waiting for. Somehow, though, it's never enough. There's always one more project, one more accomplishment before we reach the promised land. According to Tillich, God is the only ultimate concern that can truly provide fulfillment. Faith in anything else will inevitably disappoint due to its finitude. God, or the power of being, is infinite in its capacity for meaning and value. While this makes sense in an abstract way, The tricky part is to say more specifically what it means to take the power of being as one's ultimate concern. Tillich talks fairly unhelpfully about affirming being and opposing non being. And while I like the generality and substantiality of being, a more specific characterization is necessary if the concept is to do any existential or ethical work. What does one do exactly to affirm being? At this point, other work in ethical and metaphysical theory can help fill in the picture. One good source is the notion of human flourishing that philosopher Martha Nussbaum traces back through philosophers like John Stuart Mill and John Locke to its ancient roots in Aristotle and the Stoic philosophers such as Seneca. If we expand the notion of flourishing to include all things, we can start to put some content to the idea of affirming being. Some sorts of actions clearly help things flourish, and other actions have the opposite effect. Now we can reframe Kate's question about a non-religious version of church in terms of this basic value of flourishing. Could an organization committed to flourishing fulfill the role that religious groups have fulfilled in the past? Though still abstract, I think the concept of flourishing is sufficiently rich to be the basis for a satisfying value system that could bring together people with very different experiences of life. The even more abstract concept of the power of being offers a connection to the infinite necessary to counter the pointlessness of death. We don't need a big God watching us to ensure social cooperation. Social media does that better than God ever could. Yet there is an important component missing from this church of being: ritual. Groups rely on common practices to initiate new members and maintain a sense of identity for all members. Traditional religions have all kinds of rituals, from daily prayers and symbolic clothing to seasonal celebrations to weekly gatherings of scripture and instruction. These rituals become so embedded in the lives and cultures of people that they will often continue to participate long after the religion has ceased to be of ultimate concern. A church of being is possible. Rituals of flourishing could be developed. Already people celebrate the winter and summer solstices in ways that honor death and rebirth, growth and harvest. I wonder if such a place would be enough to nourish a material soul. If we built it, would you come?